What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson. And the New York Giants kind of revamped their secondary this offseason. They lost some key pieces. Of course, we know Xavier McKinney departed. They did not re-sign Adoree Jackson, but they did replace those guys. Tyler Nubin coming in, Andrew Phillips coming in, Cordell Flott hoping to take a step forward. But if you notice a theme with all those names I just mentioned, all those guys are very young, rookies, third-year players. Our number one cornerback entering just his second season. This is a youthful, inexperienced secondary, but it is one with a lot of potential and a lot of promising talent. And we kind of just want to discuss maybe the pitfalls of having such a youthful secondary. Should the Giants try and go into free agency and add a veteran to the unit, possibly? Or should they bank on all of these young guys and hope that they take that step forward and develop in 2024? Because it's a young secondary, it's inexperienced, but again, there is some serious talent here. You all know I'm very high on Deonte Banks. I was very high on him before the New York Giants even drafted him. I think he's going to be a great player. But how do I feel about Tyler Nubin, Andrew Phillips, Cordell Flott? Nick McLeod might see a lot of playing time. And Jason Pinnock going into just his second season as a starter. Fun fact, before we dive into all this, Pinnock leads that secondary with the most career starts at only 23. Very inexperienced secondary we are talking about. So we just kind of want to preview the secondary, our expectations for it this upcoming season, and just talk about its inexperience, but also its potential. But before we dive into all that, make sure to leave a like if you enjoy this episode, subscribe to the channel if you're new, ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you listen to Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, Alex, how are you doing today, my friend, and how are you feeling about this young, inexperienced, but promising New York Giants secondary?
I'm doing pretty good, and look, this Giants secondary, we've talked about it a couple times over the last couple of days in terms of, who's going to win the CB2 job, going out and getting, Tyler Nubin out of Minnesota. There's a lot left for the Giants to discover about this team, the resiliency, the adversity they will face inevitably. And, we saw Brian Daboll come out and say a couple days ago, they have a lot of confidence in Cordell Flott to be the outside boundary corner alongside Deonte Banks. We love Deonte Banks. Guy is physical. He can play zone, can play man. He's going to have his work, cut out for him this year going up against some of the best receivers in the game without Adoree Jackson to help, offset any struggles there. So, right now, I think that this Giants team is really leading into the premise that they need some of their guys to develop. I wouldn't be surprised if they went out and got a more established cornerback at some point, maybe after training camp. There will be some guys that shake free. We always see players get cut, surprise cuts, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Giants look to, one of those guys to help at least compete if they needed it. I mean, for what it's worth, Adoree Jackson is still a free agent, so maybe they do bring him back. I know he was with the he was with the Titans a couple years back. So, maybe there is some lasting, with Shane Bowen. I don't know. I don't know if those timelines matched up at all. But, looking at this Giants defense, there is a major, you could call it a weakness. In fact, I probably would call it a weakness until proven otherwise. I think this secondary is a weakness. I do think that it's only a weakness because of a lack of experience. It's a weakness because of a lack of guys who have stepped up. We just don't know what Cordell Flott's going to be. We don't know what Nick McLeod's going to be. We don't know what Tyler Nubin's going to be. We don't know what Andrew Phillips is going to be. So I kind of feel as though right now, we don't know what the secondary is going to be. And yes, they're young. There's a lot of talent there. Nubin is a ball hawk. He is a leader. He is a captain. He was a captain for Minnesota. So there's a lot to like from him. But then you look at some of these other guys, like can Deonte Banks, if he gets hurt, if he goes down, what happens? We have zero depth there. If Cordell Flott goes down, you got Nick McLeod's next man up. If Tyler Nubin goes down, you got Dane Belton behind him, another young player. Right now, Anthony, do you feel good about this secondary? Because me, I can't sit here and act like I feel good about it. I feel like there's a lot to be had. There's a lot of value, a lot of talent there that we need to extract. But one injury to one key player, and suddenly you're looking at a really problematic situation. So I do think the Giants end up bringing in a second guy. I think they are waiting to see what Darren Waller's decision is. And if he does retire, I do think they take that money and go and invest it in a cornerback. That's my current kind of state of mind. But what do you think about this? Do you think that they're a Deonte Banks injury away from being a real liability? Or do you think there's enough depth here to kind of keep us floating, despite the fact that there's a lack of experience at a lot of positions?
Well, there is definitely a lack of experience and a lack of depth, so both of those things will give you cause for concern. At the safety position, I'll start there and then work my way down. When you're looking at that position grouping, definitely inexperienced. Like I said, 23 career starts for Jason Pinnock. He's the most experienced player in the secondary, but he's a good player, and we do trust him going into his second season as a starter. I think that he's going to continue to play at a solid level for the Giants, and I think the potential with Tyler Nubin is absolutely there. How great will he be as a rookie? We'll see, but I do think that he is a great player. Obviously, there's been talk about him being athletically limited, but you have to keep in mind a lot of his athletic testing was held back by the fact that he was coming fresh off of a knee surgery when he did that testing. So, better athlete than given credit for. Great ball hawk, knows how to get his hands on the football. Minnesota's all-time leader in interceptions with 13 in his collegiate career. So, it's a great talent right there in Tyler Nubin. But behind those guys, let's not forget about Dane Belton. We do like Dane Belton, right? At least I do. I thought that he played solid in many different instances throughout the first 2 seasons of his career, playing in the slot, playing strong safety, playing free safety, a guy that the Giants have moved around quite a bit, and I do feel fine with him being that backup safety for the New York Giants. But then you go over to cornerback, and that's where I do agree with you. Things are pretty thin. Now, I think that the starters are going to be Deonte Banks and Nick McLeod. You think Cordell Flott wins that starting job, but I guess that right there gives you some reason for optimism. The fact that we have two different guys, Alex, that we think could be the starter at CB2 means that we probably have a pretty good backup piece at CB2. Either Flott wins the job and McLeod is a decent backup piece, or McLeod wins the job and Flott is a decent backup piece. So maybe the depth isn't that bad in the secondary. Now at nickel cornerback, you've got a good rotation there because, of course, you've got Andrew Phillips stepping in, probably taking over that job as a rookie, but you also have Cordell Flott, who's played there and has played well there. So there is some decent talent at the cornerback spot, but again, the inexperience is going to be a problem, and I do think they need to add more depth with guys who have been on the football field for a greater amount of time. This New York Giants team is missing depth in the secondary and missing experience. Now, Darnay Holmes is another one of the names who does stand out as a guy who has experience, but it's not a ton. I think he's been in the league, 5 years now, Darnay Holmes has, so he's got the experience to play in the nickel, can be a good backup there. But outside of that, David Long Jr. is one of the veterans that they signed. He's 26 years old, and he's an okay player, but again, not a guy that I want to see take the field and start games if there are some injuries to this team. Trey Hawkins as well, another one of the cornerbacks only entering his second season, so looking across the board, it's just a ton of inexperience. I mean, Aaron Robinson, if you want to keep him in mind, he's on this roster still. He's barely seen an NFL field. He's been injured every single season. We haven't seen him in what, Alex? 2 years since we've seen Aaron Robinson play football? Crazy. So it's just a lot of inexperience for this New York Giants team. But again, like I said, there's talent. There are some talented players. How high end is that talent can definitely be debated. But again, the depth is definitely lacking with the experience aspect of this team. But in terms of how young and talented these players are, I do feel confident in a good number of them. So how are you feeling about that safety room, though, Alex? Of course, like I said, Jason Pinnock is going to be one of the starters. Tyler Nubin, another one. Behind him, though, Dane Belton. I'm curious to hear how you're feeling about him going into his third season. And they did also draft Jervarius Owens last year, and he looked good in training camp. Didn't play much in the regular season. Maybe he could get on the field a little bit more. And Jalen Mills is the guy that they signed as their veteran presence in the secondary during this offseason. So just kind of how are you feeling about the safety grouping?
The safeties are, I actually don't hate the safety room. Losing McKinney sucks. And by the way, I'm going to follow up from our last podcast to talk about Xavier McKinney's contract just for like a minute here. A lot of people, obviously didn't like the fact that we let McKinney go. Some people thought it was a good move to, reduce money. But McKinney's contract is like super interesting. So I'll just run through it for you for like 10 seconds. And then you guys can leave your comments in the comment section about what you think about it. McKinney signed a 4-year, $67 million deal with $23 million guaranteed. So the $23 million guaranteed really isn't that much. He has a dead cap hit of $23 million for this upcoming season. But the really interesting thing about McKinney's contract is that there's an out in his deal after the first season. So he's a $7.8 million cap hit in 2024. and then they can take the out in his deal at $17.25 million in dead money, which, by the way, if they decided to spread that over the final 3 years of the deal, they'd be paying $5.6 million in dead money for 3 years. So like it kind of would be nothing. It would be like it would just kind of be like water under the bridge, especially because Green Bay has, Jordan Love still under contract on a rookie deal, I believe, for another 2 seasons. So pretty cheap there. Like they can move on from McKinney after 1 year, and he only sees $23 million guaranteed from a $67 million deal. So if he struggles or gets hurt, they can just move on, and like he basically has to restart the entire thing. I personally don't get why he would sign this contract. He wanted the average salary, $16.75 million per year. If the Giants were willing to give him like $30 million, but pay him like $13 or $14 million per year, you're better off taking the guaranteed money, because at that position, with the out in this contract, it just makes no sense to me. Maybe the Giants didn't even offer him that, so it's possible that was the best he got. But an out after the first year at only $23 million guaranteed, which is less than 50% of the contract, much less than 50% of the contract, I don't get it. It's like 33% of the contract. Super interesting contract. Don't really get it. But the Giants obviously let him go because he wanted the maximum $67 million. He wanted to make as much as that. So he has to play well and stay healthy to actually earn that. And the Giants said, well, good luck, buddy. Like, we're not going to, tie you to our cap hit at that price tag if you obviously you play well and keep going after the first season. But just an interesting kind of insight into McKinney's deal. Didn't really get why there's a first year out after it. Really strange move for McKinney to sign that, but nonetheless, he's trying to maximize his earnings over the next 5 seasons or so. But looking at what the Giants do have in the secondary at safety, Tyler Nubin, I like him. I think he'll be a solid day one starter. He may not be McKinney good, but he'll be slightly above average, average at the very least as a rookie, in my opinion. Not Deontay Banks, but rather Dane Belton. He's got to step up and help supplement some injuries if they occur. I don't think he's going to be starting, but maybe he'll be a sub-package guy. He's solid in zone coverage, and Shane Bowen's defense does actually lean itself to more zone. So I wonder if he has more of a role in this defense. Jason Pinnock was very solid for us last year. He's a good player. I like him. And then Javarius Owens, don't see him really cracking the roster per se. I see him more as a practice squad or more of a special teams guy maximum at this point, or really just if injuries happen, like he's a last resort. And then who else do we have? Do we have anybody else in this at safety? All right, rather Jalen Mills, good veteran presence, defensive back, just nice to have some experience there. The Giants don't have much of it, with Belton, obviously, and Nubin and Owens, and, then you have Pinnock, who's, 3 years of experience, so it's not crazy. Mills has, 8 years of experience, so you like to have that kind of a leader in that room. But for the most part, I like that we're leaning on some of our guys to develop and get better, drafting guys to, kind of prioritize positional value and spend the money elsewhere, even if you disagree or agree with the Brian Burns contract. It's kind of irrelevant, more so just investing in the pass rush, irrespective of the contract itself. So, I do like the safety group. I think that there is upside there. It's not like a short-term win now move. It's a long-term play, in my opinion. I think 2 years from now, we'll see these guys really maximize their value and we'll see the production. But this year will really be about getting Nubin experience, getting Banks experience against top receivers, and seeing who emerges from that kind of depth of corners and Andrew Phillips, and obviously, guys like Cordell Flott and Nick McLeod, who emerges as a starter. That's going to be what I'm kind of locked into during training camp for sure.
Yeah, that'll definitely be one of the biggest talking points at camp, is who takes that CB2 job and what these cornerbacks do during training camp to rise to the occasion and try and get that playing time. There is a lot of competition here, which, for the record, I think is a great thing. Having competition in the secondary, it's going to force these guys to play better. You're going to have Cordell Flott entering a decisive season for himself. Now he's got to compete with another rookie who just got brought in Andrew Phillips. Also has to compete with Nick McLeod. It's only going to make him play harder, play better, and just make all of these guys put their A game forward and try their best to earn those starting jobs and hopefully compete well in those jobs so they don't get taken away from them midway through the season. And don't even sleep on Trey Hawkins. He looked so good in training camp last year. I'm still going to point to that because I'm going to say I think that there was a big difference between what the Giants were doing in training camp versus the very aggressive man coverage heavy system that they were running during the regular season under Wink Martindale. I think that Hawkins will play better in the zone coverage scheme from Shane Bowen if he does see the field this season. And I do think I'm more confident in him going into this year than I even was last year, because there were so many question marks about will his training camp play translate to the regular season. We weren't completely sure. It didn't translate. But now going into his second season in this new defensive scheme, 6'3" cornerback who's got good length, good patience in his coverage. I think that Hawkins, don't rule him out. Maybe he could be a solid player, or at least a good backup for the Giants this upcoming season. But Deonte Banks is another player that I just want to discuss and talk about what our impressions were of him as a rookie, Alex, because Banks, of course, like I said earlier, and like I've said many times, I was a huge fan of him coming out of Maryland, thought he was an excellent prospect, was the number one guy that I wanted the Giants to draft. I had them taking him in my mock draft. Banks is physical, he's aggressive, he loves to play in man coverage, he's great in zone coverage, which I think is something a lot of Giants fans don't realize. What he did best at Maryland wasn't playing man coverage, essentially running with his back to the quarterback across the field. It was playing man match zone coverage defense, basically taking away anything that comes into his zone and transitioning it into a man coverage, playing quarters coverage, or cover three as well, just taking a sideline away during his time at Maryland. That's the stuff that he was really, really good at. And he was also a phenomenal tackler. Some of those things absolutely translated to his rookie season. I think that he was a good tackler. He was definitely aggressive, and he had a few big plays. There was that one play against the Green Bay Packers. I remember that deep shot that Jordan Love took down the left sideline. That was in that cover three zone defense. Banks made a diving pass break up there to save a touchdown. We saw flashes of potential with that play. He had an interception against the Patriots that I thought was pretty good. It was an overthrow, but good instincts to be there on time, make the pick. He had the pick against Washington. I thought it was overall a solid season as a rookie from Deonte Banks. Now, his PFF grade was a 51.4. He let up a few touchdowns, didn't have the best statistics in coverage. But again, I feel like a lot of that was a product of the system. Playing in that aggressive man coverage defense that Martindale had him play, you are going to get beat quite a bit. You just have to make the tackle afterwards in order to make the play, and Deonte Banks did that. Again, I think a lot of his struggles were a result of that system, and a lot of the times he was probably told, you are going to get beat on this play, just make the tackle and keep them short of the sticks. And I think that's what happened most of the time. So I thought that Banks was impressive, but like I said with Trey Hawkins, I feel the same way about Banks, where in this more reserved conservative defense, it's going to be a lot of zone coverage. The Giants have pass rushers up front now to actually get after the quarterback. Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, Dexter Lawrence. The four-man rush should finally start to get home. So now you can have Deonte Banks stand and play his zone coverage, just lock down a third of the field, just play an entire sideline and just lock it down. And I think that's going to be so much better for this team. So not only am I expecting Deonte Banks to continue to play well, I think that he is going to take a big step forward this upcoming season. And again, it's because I think this defensive scheme is going to suit his playing style better, and because I think that this improved pass rush is going to make the entire secondary better. And maybe that's why the Giants are going a little cheaper in their secondary, going a little bit more of the inexperienced route. I think that they're banking on this front four to get home, to get these pass rushers in the face of the quarterback, force some errant throws, and get the ball out quickly while the defensive backs are still in position to make plays on the football. So I think that Deonte Banks is going to feel that, and he's going to have a great second season because of that pass rush. And just overall, the new shape of the secondary and the scheme that they're going to have is going to help Deonte Banks as well. I'm really high on him going into the season. When we do breakout candidates, I know that we're planning on doing an episode on some of the guys that we like to break out this upcoming season. Deonte Banks might be number one on the list for me. I think everything is perfectly aligned. This defense is in some ways built around Deonte Banks. I'm expecting a huge year from him going into his second season. Alex, what did you see from Deonte Banks that gave you some confidence going into year two during his rookie season, and how are you feeling about him going into the sophomore year?
The most important thing to me about Deonte Banks is that he seems to have that alpha dog mentality. You love to have cornerbacks that, I know everyone hated, some of these guys like Richard Sherman, and some of those like really egotistical cornerbacks, but like that's kind of what it takes to beat these egotistical receivers. Like guys like Justin Jefferson who just have just immense talent and they know it. OBJ in his prime when he knew it. Like you have to be elite in that in your mindset, not just physically. And we know Deonte Banks is one of the most athletic cornerbacks, one of the best athletically graded cornerbacks in the last decade, right? He's got the tangibles. That's for a fact. Does he have the mental components? Does he have the confidence to go and stand up against CeeDee Lamb and shut him down in primetime? In my opinion, I think he does. And he's a second-year player, right? Deonte Banks, a year under his belt. Now he just needs to be confident, make a big plays when it comes down to it. And I do think that that will be the deciding factor of like whether or not he ends up being great or not. It's not because he doesn't have the talent. It's because of his mindset and confidence. So like I do 100% think that he can be that good. I want to see that same level of confidence, though, from guys like Cordell Flott, from guys, like Nick McLeod, if they're going to be competing for starting jobs like Andrew Phillips. I want to see them have that dog mentality. I think Andrew Phillips does have that, at least from all the stuff that I've read and heard about him and his intangible qualities. I need to see that dog mentality from Cordell Flott, like getting up after a big pass breakup, excited and hyped. Part of why I loved Malachi Corley in the draft, because after a big run, dude would pop up with just unprecedented energy. He was like basically a spark plug for a lot of that Western Kentucky offense. So I need to see some of that on defense too. Guys that are just excited, celebrating, having a good time, creating that relationship with other teammates and coming to celebrate with others too. It's not just about you, it's about everybody. So I do think that I want to see more of that, some more just, intangible stuff from the Giants. Not just always, we have talent, like objectively we have talent, but sometimes it's the mental component that kills you in games. It's the giving up on plays. It's the not being confident. It's the lack of discipline. So that's really what I'm looking forward to. Some of these younger guys, Deonte Banks, Cordell Flott, whatever it might be. I do believe that it really will come down to their mental capacity rather than their talent, because I know that they have that. So that's kind of where I kind of lean towards in terms of projecting what these guys can do. Winning those competitions, winning those battles in training camp will just be the first step in winning them during the regular season.
Yeah, 100%. I think that mentality is everything. Confidence is everything. Those cornerbacks that play with swagger, confidence, and a killer's mentality, those are the guys that really play well at the NFL level. And I agree with you. Deonte Banks has that. Let's see if the rest of these guys have that, and if they play with that mindset and make themselves great professional athletes and turn into solid NFL players. So it's going to be really fun to watch this unit develop, because it is so young and it is so inexperienced, and there probably will be hiccups early in the year. It sounds like the Giants are going to be playing, we're recording this prior to the schedule dropping, sounds like the Giants are going to be playing the Vikings in week 1. They're going to be going up against some great playmakers: Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson. They've got to face AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, and the Eagles twice a year. Of course, they've got to face Terry McLaurin and the Commanders twice a year, CeeDee Lamb and the Cowboys twice a year. This Giants secondary is going to face off against a lot of talented playmakers. It's not going to be easy, but they do have the talent to get it done. But they also are inexperienced. So I do expect some hiccups, some growing pains early in the year. But as the season progresses, I think this Giants secondary has enough talent to really develop into a solid unit by season's end. And I'm very excited to watch it break down and just to watch them develop and hopefully become that great unit. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be an intriguing season, and it's definitely going to be an interesting training camp and off season once we get to these practices and see some of these young players start to take those steps forward in their development at those practices. It's going to be a lot of fun, and of course, we're going to be updating you on all of those things: the Giants training camp, their continual development of their young players, any signings that they maybe do make to their secondary, anything New York Giants related, news, rumors, content, speculation, all right here on Fireside Giants. So make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this episode, subscribe to the channel if you're new, ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you're listening to Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, we'll catch you on the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.
Perfect.